Have you ever left a conversation or a situation feeling totally drained, even though nothing big happened? Like you suddenly picked up someone else's tension or heavy emotions? That shift is never random. Today on Galactic Alchemy, we are diving into energy boundaries, how to clearly know what's ours and what isn't, and how to protect our energy with discernment and compassion.
Welcome to our Galactic Alchemy podcast.
Whether we are exploring intuition, healing, or higher guidance, you are invited to tune in, not just with your ears, but with your heart and your energy.
I'm Anita, and I work with soul-aligned leaders, visionaries, and healers to restore energetic coherence, awaken truth, and reconnect to the intelligence of the heart.
I'm Azriena, and with my soul alchemy modality, I guide people in multidimensional soul integration, clearing timelines, transmuting distortions, and reclaiming their own unique soul gifts.
This podcast is a space for deep connection, for attuned conversations that clear distortion, awaken soul gifts, and return us to the frequency of who we really are.
I'm sure that many of us have encountered moments and situations where we walk into a room or hop on a call feeling totally fine, calm, centered in our own energy. And then in a little while we start feeling this weird shift creeping in. And more often than not, it's not a positive feeling. Our mood seems to change for no clear reason. We suddenly feel tense, drained, and we are suddenly carrying emotions that feel off, like it's not really us. And we catch ourselves thinking, wait, what just happened? Why am I suddenly feeling down? Was that me? Or did I just pick something up? I've learned for many years now how important and actually precious these signals really are. The truth is, a lot of us who are sensitive end up absorbing stuff that isn't ours when we haven't yet learned how to clearly tell the difference. Energy boundaries. That's exactly what we're diving into in today's episode. What is mine and what isn't? We're going to talk about how we can protect our energy, not by shutting people out, but through discernment and compassion, letting our inner knowing guide us to what feels aligned and what doesn't. And sometimes setting a boundary is as gentle as reducing how much access someone has to us, to our time, attention, or emotional space. How can we do it in a way that's not harsh, cold, or rejecting, and without having to feel guilty, but is respectful of our own capacity, which we should care for and honor? Also because the bewildering truth is, we are far more energetically connected than most of us were ever taught to realize. Our nervous systems are constantly reading the room. Our bodies are picking up signals pulsating beneath the surface, and our energy fields are constantly dancing with everyone and everything around us in ways that are invisible, yet profoundly real. Today, let's explore together one of the most liberating skills any sensitive soul can eventually learn to master. How do we tell the difference between what is ours and what belongs to someone else? And how do we stay open-hearted and connected without losing ourselves in the process? How can we learn to create and establish healthy energy boundaries with compassion and not guilt? Anita, I know you have a lot of experience with this, and I'm sure our audience would love to hear from you.
Thanks, Azriena. So I've noticed that from a young age, children, teenagers who are really empathic and sensitive will walk into rooms and they'll feel that shift and they'll think it's them. They'll start to identify with the energy. So if it's anxiety that you feel when you walk into a room, they'll think they feel anxious, whereas moments ago they were fine. So when I'm working with people, one of the big tools I teach them is that before you go out into a crowd, really surround yourself in a bubble of white light. And then I get them to violet flame the white light. And it might sound a little out there, but what the white light does is it sets the intention to protect your environment and to protect your energy. The violet flame then cleans and dissolves any lower or negative energy, so that when you walk into a room, you are now healthily, happily within your own energy. Now, when you look around the room, you're able to look with discernment. If you feel anxiety or distress creeping into your energetic field, you can pause and recognize that a minute ago I felt perfectly fine. So I'm now going to do a little diagnostics check. I'm going to see is this my energy that's anxious, or am I picking up on the energy within the room? When I say a diagnostics check, this is where we become a little more spiritual. I will call him my guide, and an example would be Archangel Michael, and I'll ask him to sweep through my energy and clear or clean any negative or lower energy. And then I'll ask him, is this my energy that I'm feeling, or is it someone else's? And if it's someone else's, I ask him to remove it immediately. And it's crazy, but it works. Within 10 seconds, I would go from feeling anxiety to feeling perfectly calm. And I started to practice this and test it so much that I got to the point where I realized I really was calm and I really was centered, but somebody in the room, or the collective energy of the room, was carrying anxiety, nervousness, stress, or discomfort. And it was such a wake-up call for me to recognize that just because I'm feeling something doesn't mean it belongs to me. And it was really big relief to know that actually I was fine and that the energy in the room was distressed. And then it was interesting to watch who would come towards me and who would stay away from me. So the people who'd come towards me, often because I do practice this work and it's all about heart and light and energy work for me, the people who were in distress, they tend to find me and they will come forward and then they'll start telling me a story and then they'll pour this story out of their hearts about how something's happened and it's distressed them before they got there. And in that moment, my only job is to really listen. And for anyone out there who's thinking, well, I don't want to be going out into public places and having people constantly come towards me and pour their hearts out, fair enough. But in those moments, you can politely say, that must be difficult, or you could say something that's kind and generous, and then you can exit the conversation. You don't have to stay with that person. You don't have to listen to the entire thing. And if it's your nature to want to show up and help people, then you can do that. But there's no rescuing here. There's just the awareness that if you do practice heart work, you know, those people who need more love and they need to feel safe in these big rooms, they will find you because you are exuding an energy of safety. Don't you think, Az?
I completely agree, Anita. This is the thing that we have to admit. Some of us empath and some of us older souls, starseeds, we did come to Earth this time around to do this work, and that is part of the package. And that's why setting our energy boundaries are really important, because then we can share and give and help from a place where the cup is full and we are not feeling that our energy is being drained even through our own good intentions. And going back to what you just said about white light it and then you violet flame it, I can fully attest to that. So going back, I think this is about a couple of decades ago, I started pink bubbling it. So I can't remember where I first learned this technique. It could be one of Louise Hayes, it could be one of Esther Hicks. And I have been sharing it with a lot of friends and people way beyond I kind of pivoted into doing energy work for my livelihood. What I noticed is, apart from just going to the room and feeling that, okay, maybe this energy is a little bit off, the reality is there are people out there who are not on our frequency, and you can tell people who are off with us, people who just not take to us for whatever reason it is. And especially if you're in school or in the workplace, it gets really, really uncomfortable when there's constant interaction with this person. And when we are sensitive, we take it on oh so much. So apart from protecting our space, with the pink bubble is that you can set the intention, set the pink, light, healthy, loving bubble around that person. But also by saying that you are not infringing on their space or their free will. This is just what you're doing to send in love with this bubble of pink light, and may what serves you come to you. So this is what I kind of share with people. And they did say sometimes it takes 3-4 days, but there is a shift. So I just keep advising people to do that or sharing that as a tool, and also do that to myself.
That's beautiful, as I haven't heard that one in a long time. So it's a really great reminder that sometimes just sending someone some love and surrounding them in a bubble of pink light just softens it. And I think that pink light, it feels very much like heart energy. And I feel like what it does is if there are wounds within someone's energetic field, they immediately just take a deep breath in and they begin to relax into it. And as you said, it never infringes on their free will. It's definitely a gift that someone gives you. It's like you're gifting them some really beautiful, soft energy. Perfect. So tell me how it protects us.
So I believe that the soothing, loving energies coming in, the properties of those energy may start to shift and maybe massage the prickliness in that person's aura.
That's a really great way of saying it. Yeah.
I know, because I've been told that my energy is big and sometimes it feels quite prickly, even when I don't mean to. So I do try to be a bit more conscious of that. I try to soften my own energy sometimes before I walk in. On that note, I think it's a natural segue to talk about emotional contagion, which is something I've learned quite recently. Because most of us, the sensitives, we naturally experience the world through a very sensitive energetic system. We immediately notice the atmosphere, the emotional tone of a conversation, whether someone's anxious, frustrated, or upset, even if they don't say anything, right? And we know that this sensitivity is a beautiful gift. It can be a beautiful gift, though it doesn't come without its own baggage. It allows for empathy, intuition, a much deeper connection with others. But when we don't understand how to manage this sensitivity, it can become overwhelming, because suddenly we're not just feeling our own emotions, we're feeling the emotional environment around us. And this is what I'm learning, that psychology calls this emotional contagion, where emotions do move through a group almost like weather systems. And if someone enters a room feeling a certain way, others will feel it too. And obviously, if we are naturally sensitive, we absorb that emotional atmosphere without even realizing it. So I wonder, do you have any story where you have helped yourself or your client move through this?
100%. This is such a big topic. I've had a beautiful woman who came to me and she was talking about being invited to a very formal event, and everyone was very glamorous. It was like a ballroom. They're all dressed up. And she was going to meet her potential future sister-in-law. This other young woman, also beautiful, young, accomplished, in a gorgeous gown. And it was like these two women walked into a room, and as they walked towards each other, my client started to feel anxiety in her chest. And she had to pause and breathe and check in. Is it her anxiety? Is she nervous about meeting this young woman? Or is it this woman's anxiety about meeting her? And as they moved together, the image I kept seeing was two queens meeting each other after a long time apart. And as the queens come together, the truth is they're definitely going to hold their own power. They're definitely going to stand in their own energy. And there is a sense of them wanting a deep heart connection with each other, because there's a familiarity. You're not accidentally marrying into the same family. So there's a sense of wanting that camaraderie and connection. And at the same time, there's a sense of wanting to not succumb, not to give up any of your personal power, and not to be anyone except who you truly are. So the energy of that can feel frictious. And the truth is they couldn't decide if they liked each other or if they were afraid of each other, like there was a bit of a challenge in the energy field, or if there was something else going on. So they chatted, and of course it's nice, and then they were friendly, and then everybody's happy. And I think in the moment, everybody was giving their best selves, and that seemed to soothe the energy. When they left, there was a sense of dread and discord within her. She started to run the story to see if there was anything that she'd said that was inappropriate. And then she was running the story to see if there was anything that this person had said that was inappropriate. Because now we're going to run checks and balances, making sure that we were honored, that we were respected, that we didn't give our power away, that we didn't negotiate that energy. I mean, clearly this is a story about a younger woman, because as you get older, you do tend to size these rooms up, and two queens can come together and talk and really have a great time and then leave in great shape, because you know who you are and you're not looking to be identified by something else. I think there were layers to this story. You know, you want to show up and be your best self in front of your potential in-laws. And this is the beginning. This is the first meeting of two queens who are potentially going to spend the next 30 or 40 years in each other's company. So it was a really interesting dynamic. When we broke it down for my client, there was a sense that she hadn't protected her energy before she went in. We already know she's highly empathic. She's really sensitive to energy, and it makes her superb at the work that she does, because she does a lot of healing work as well. And she's really intuitive and on point. And, you know, I see her as a leader in the future for women who are invested in expanding consciousness. So she's a great woman. Irrespective of the story that you're telling yourself, you still need to come back into alignment. So when you're in alignment and you're in love with who you are physically, mentally, emotionally, you begin to recognize that whatever anyone else is doing really is a reflection of how they're showing up in the world. And what you're doing and the choices you're making and the way you treat yourself when you walk out of these rooms is a reflection of how comfortable you've become with the story you're telling yourself about the person you are. I think it's important in those moments to practice grace and forgiveness and acceptance, and then step back from the situation and see things from a slightly higher perspective. Understand that whilst there might have been a tussle over certain points in the conversation for energy or dominance or whatever that was, recognize it for what it is. It's a chance for the two of you to show up and to really work on the parts of yourself that needs polishing. And then also have the wisdom to step back and say, okay, that was a great first meeting, and I'm interested to see where this goes. And I understand that moving forward, your acceptance of who I am and your definition of who I am doesn't change who I am. That will be a reflection of you. From this moment forward, I get to continually show up and be my best self. And I will continually do that until I get to the point where I'm so in flow, I'm so comfortable with who I am, that it doesn't occur to me to walk out of these rooms anymore and dissect what was going on. Because that feels like an old paradigm. And the new timeline is asking us to really stand in alignment and really come into the full awareness of who you are. What do you think, Azriena?
It's a very succinct points you just put across. I reflect what you said about how with age, if we learned and we deal with life in a way that honor ourselves, we start building healthier, better boundaries. I realize one of the things I struggle so much with is inauthenticity. I have a lot of compassion for all of our policies, right? Most of us are just doing our best. But inauthenticity, I really, really struggle with that. And I think where I established this boundary, I didn't know I was doing it, and it was not easy because I tend to be the person who sees through people way ahead of time. And those of us who are empathic and sensitive, if we stand in that power, we develop such a strong sense of knowing, where even though everyone else is saying it in a different angle, you kind of just already see it in a different way.
So in my 30s, I was an expat in the Middle East. Most of my colleagues were also expats. We did all the young, glorious expat stuff together. We formed really tight bonds in a short period of time.
But I came into it having left behind a marriage, having worked for actually longer than some of the others. So I was actually a bit mature than how I looked. People think I was younger than my age. So with that, they will kind of dismiss you as well because they think they can manipulate you because you're a bit young and they can try to wrap you around your fingers. So when I stand in my power, people struggle with that because they're like, why is she coming down so hard on me? So now, my 33rd birthday party. By that time, I had been living there for about a couple of years. I already knew who I was happy to have in my circle and who I cannot allow to enter my space. And this one specific person, for a couple of years, I have sensed her intentions with me. I didn't feel they were very clear. They were obvious examples. But I also realized that, especially when I was younger, I was a bit more curt. Sometimes the way I expressed myself as well probably didn't land well. It was just one of those tricky dynamics. But what made it trickier was that we were in the same team. And in a way, she worked as, okay, if we're going down like a professional hierarchy, she was below me, so to speak. But that doesn't matter too much to me. Socially, we did have overlapping social circles for a while. When it came to my birthday, I wanted to invite about 40 people into my apartment for my birthday party. And it was very important who steps into that place. Now, what made it hard was that I loved everyone else in the department, and I invited everyone else, and I left her out. It was not an easy decision to come to. Friends came up to me and said it was not nice of you to exclude her, but I just held my ground. I told myself I'm not going to force myself to do something just for the sake of being nice. This is a memory I'm creating that is important to me, and I want to make sure those who step into my sacred space, which is my home, have the best intentions for me that I know of at that time. So it got tricky, but I held on. I had people leading up to the birthday party trying to find out why I have not invited her, that I should change my mind. And what made it extra difficult was literally on the eve of the party, she came into my office and she conjured up this entire situation to try to get an invite. She left a present in my bag and she was trying to get me to look at it. And I think she wants me to fall, and I was not having it. So I tried to be gracious. I did my best to be kind. I said, thank you for the present. Thank you for this and that. And I still did not invite her. Now what happened? I had the best smashing birthday party ever. And what also happened is that I dealt with the awkwardness that followed from then. I knew it was coming though. I knew it was coming, but I cannot have this person in my home. And guess what? 15 years on, 12 years on, 13 years on, I can think back to that birthday party and I had only the best memories. And I'm like, if I had entered someone whose intentions towards me were dubious, just for the sake of social niceties or for the sake of other people so they don't feel awkward, then I would not have honored myself. So I think this is one of those things that could come across quite harsh to people. But I just thought, I had 30 other people there who were happy to celebrate me and whom I love. And I can think back now, I'm glad I did it that way. And not this person. And what confirmed it for me was, and we talk about being sensitive and picking up energies and all that. When we were saying goodbye for the final time, when I was leaving the Middle East, and because of politeness and everything, we hugged each other goodbye. 3 hours after that, Anita, I had the most excruciating cramp in my abdomen that lasted for about 72 hours. So for some of us who are so sensitive, do acknowledge these patterns. So I walked away doubled over that evening. I could not stand up. And I do not blame her. I'm not saying she sent me bad intentions. It's just the energy between us were not right. But all I'm saying, I know it came from that. And I've never, ever, ever, ever had that pain or sensation ever again in my entire life.
It's really interesting that you trusted yourself to identify the cause of that pain. And I think it's important for the people listening to this podcast that don't do energy work and may not have that awareness. The reason the Akashic Records exist is to give language to a lot of the things that go on in our lives that seem to have patterns behind them, but we're not quite sure where they originated. In the Akashic Records, we would absolutely recognize that if your gut instinct is telling you that that was the source of that pain, then we would explore that and we would break it down and see what is the emotional nature of it, what is the energetic statement behind it, how is it being upheld. And I think the fact that you were able to implement a boundary, and I really applaud you for this, because I think people would be listening to this thinking, I could never do that. I would have felt forced to invite that person. I think it is a really difficult decision to make, especially culturally, if you're brought up to people please or to be inclusive. And I'm all for inclusivity, but I love the idea that you so trusted and knew yourself that you were able to stand in your power and uphold something that was important to you. I think it's important for people to know that if it's not something that's within their purview and they couldn't do that, that's great as well. Like, that's a reflection of your nature. And in years to come, when you look back at those moments, if that memory is marred by a really uncomfortable experience, it's interesting how that's one of the few things you actually remember about the party is the thing that you didn't enjoy. And what you did was you gave yourself permission to only create memories that brings you joy. It's a wonderful memory. But you protected your space in that memory. You were very conscious to make sure that you upheld your boundaries. I think people like you, Azriena, who are able to just know themselves so clearly from a very young age, honestly, you give everyone else permission to at least reflect on why they make the choices they do. I think it's a gift to have strong boundaries. I really do. Traditionally, when people talk about Akashic records, they talk about negative intentions, and then there was a constraint, and there was a binding. My expertise is I will break that down and create a structure around it so that you can understand how that would impact your choices in this lifetime. If somebody is unhappy with you and you have a really open heart and you're a really kind person, if they direct enough negative intentions towards you, and you have a sense of culpability that you're concerned you might have caused them some harm or you might have been responsible for something that distressed them, if your heart opens even a fraction, that is all it takes for one of these negative intentions to take hold in your heart. Truthful or not, it could be misguided. It could be, there's plenty of clients who take responsibility for situations that they were way too young to be responsible for. But they feel responsible. 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds, there's enough cognition that they recognize that they might be responsible. And now they've spent their lifetime feeling guilty for something that had nothing to do with them or that shouldn't have been on their shoulders. So we work to clear that out of the Akashic records. When you talk about this pain you had, I've experienced that. I know exactly what you're talking about. It's energy. It's the power of energy. So the way to heal that clearly is to sit in the discomfort, breathe through it, and then release it. And you might have a physical tool for releasing it, like you might have like Reiki or a somatic tool to remove it from your body. But if you don't, you sit through that experience. And as you're searching for an answer, it becomes really clear to you. Like you can literally hear it as a voice in your head that this really feels deliberate. It feels really unfair, and it's also a little bit frightening because what it means is that energy has power and that energy can penetrate your energetic field, and if you don't uphold really strong boundaries, you might end up having an experience that's really unpleasant. Boundaries are often misunderstood. People sometimes believe that boundaries mean pushing others away or rejecting relationships, but that isn't what boundaries are about. Healthy boundaries are simply a way of protecting the integrity of your energy and your time. Sometimes a boundary looks like saying no. Sometimes it looks like leaving a conversation that feels unproductive. And sometimes it simply means reducing how much access someone has to your attention. But that doesn't mean you care about them any less. It simply means you're respecting your own capacity. And interestingly, when boundaries are clear, relationships often become healthier because people interact with each other from a place of honesty rather than exhaustion. I remember a time earlier in my own journey when I realized something important about boundaries. There was a situation where I kept showing up in the same dynamic again and again, trying to keep things smooth, trying to keep everyone comfortable. But every time I left that interaction, I felt completely depleted. And eventually, I had to ask myself a very honest question. Why am I staying in a situation that consistently drains me? And the answer was interesting. It wasn't because I wanted to be there. It was because I thought I was supposed to be there. Once I recognized that, something changed and shifted within me. I realized that boundaries are not pushing people away. They are about respecting your own energy. And sometimes the most loving choice you can make for yourself and for the relationship is to reduce the level of access someone has to you.
And so, Anita, this is where I'm touching on a little bit of what we covered in a previous episode, which is about the level of access we allow people to have to our space, to our mental space, to our mobile devices. All of this stuff cloud our space and our energy body. A couple of years ago, I switched out my Facebook account. I stopped using my personal account, which had the life stories of people I've known for like 20 years. And some maybe I do not care so much for anymore. Not in a bad way, just we were just not really in each other's life. And I don't need to see their life on my feed, because when we read something, we have a thought, and sometimes it is of judgment, or it is of like curiosity, which maybe is not even productive. And I'm like, why am I wasting my time on that? So I switch that completely. I keep the personal account just to stay in touch with certain people. And then I switch to a completely new account where I'm just following the spiritual leaders or teachers and that I find good for me. So my feed has been cleaned up. So that was also like maybe a cyber boundary I set for myself. So at least I'm not distracted by information or news or updates that I don't really need to know. So I feel my energy has stabilized a lot more from that, not leaking and seeping into spaces it doesn't need to. What do you have to say about us being able to stabilize our energy when it comes to having created boundaries for ourselves?
That's a great question, because I think it's important to then uphold the boundaries. And it becomes really easy to just slip back into old habits. And I think when you prioritize your peace and your happiness and your joy, you do need to practice it a little bit. It's like going to a gym and creating new muscle memory. And you really need to do it. You need to keep your word to yourself. Keeping your word to yourself, making sure that you're in good shape, because when you do, you'll be able to show up and be of assistance to others in a way that's more meaningful. I think it's really important too for the young adults who are looking for mentorship and looking for tools that help them to re-regulate their system. Giving them permission to set a boundary with us even, and then being agreeable and saying, fair enough, that's your boundary and I will honor it, rather than trying to double down and explain why that boundary doesn't hold up. So I think it's important to let other people have boundaries with us as well. And this brings me to a really important theme, and I'm interested what you think, Azriena. Sometimes when people hold a boundary with us, there is a moment where you recognize that the boundaries for them, they need to feel safe. And if you're talking about any subject matter that pushes the boundaries and makes them a little bit uncomfortable, and maybe it is about consciousness, recognizing that everyone wakes up at a time that's right for them. So knowing when to just step back and honor that boundary, but also becoming comfortable with recognizing that a boundary is not rejection. So sometimes it's hard for women to maintain relationships with each other when they have boundaries with each other, because it could feel a little bit like rejection. So being able to check in and saying, is it actually rejection? Is this a wound of mine that I need to look at? And if it is rejection, let's be playful with this. If it is a little bit of rejection, recognizing the source of the rejection, sometimes it's that your level of understanding of something may exceed theirs, and that can be perceived as a threat. That can be really difficult to be around. So you might find that you're doing everything right in this friendship, but there are boundaries and they seem to be getting stronger. Now you have a question to ask. Is this a friendship? Is this a relationship you want to stay in? Is this an equitable exchange of information and energy? Because if you're constantly solving or helping or listening to their stories, and there's a really strong boundary that you can't tap into consciousness, spirituality, there are subject matters you're going to have to avoid, there's a lack of authenticity that develops over time, and it creates a gap, and sometimes that gap cannot be fixed. You can't bridge it. You can't bridge everything. Let's just be fair. It's not your job to bridge everything. It's your job to be grateful for what that relationship offered you. It doesn't have to end, but there's a really good chance that you just won't feel as nourished by it, and you may not engage as much as you used to. And that's okay, because that leaves room for you to go and put your energy somewhere else on something that's educating you, nourishing you, and helping you to grow and develop. Because this is something to keep in mind. This is your life. You're here to come and have an experience of your life, of your character, your nature, your personality, your energy. And if you waste that, that's really your responsibility. And if you want to reclaim your life and reclaim your direction, it's important for you to just set some boundaries for yourself. So before you jump into line and you're obeying everybody else's boundaries, check your own, do a quick diagnostics test on yours, see where you are, make sure you're showing up in a really authentic way for yourself. Otherwise, you start to feel questioned, you start to look for reasons that things aren't quite right. The truth is maybe you just need to do a quick spring clean of your own boundaries. What do you think, Azriena?
So beautifully put, Anita. Friendships do evolve, and with the creation and establishment and upholding of certain boundaries from either side, the dynamics will change. It takes two hands to clap. And I like to think of this as energetic hygiene. Just as we take care of our physical health every day, we also need to take care of the energetic environments and dynamics we move through. So this might mean everything you've just said earlier, and also being selective about the information we consume. So how can we actually streamline our social media channels and interactions, right? Limiting exposure to constant negativity is another one. Also choosing conversations that uplift rather than drain us. Because these choices are not selfish. They are simply part of maintaining emotional and energetic well-being.
Perhaps the most important thing to remember is this. Compassion does not require self-abandonment. We can care about people deeply while still honoring our own limits. And when we stop trying to carry everyone else's emotional weight, something very interesting happens. We actually become more present, more grounded, and far more capable of offering genuine support when it is truly needed.
And this is really where the alchemy happens. Because once we begin to understand what is ours and what isn't, something powerful shifts. We stop reacting to every emotional wave that passes through our environment. Instead, we become observers of energy. And from that place of awareness, we gain choice. We can choose what we allow into our field, we can choose how we respond, and we can choose to return to our own center rather than being pulled in every direction. That is the deeper essence of Galactic Alchemy. It is the art of transforming unconscious reactions into conscious presence. So before you move into the rest of your day, we invite you to pause for a moment. Ask yourself, where in my life does my energy feel supported? And where does it feel drained? And if something feels misaligned, what small boundary might restore balance? Because the moment we understand the difference between what is ours and what isn't, we begin to reclaim our energy, our clarity, and our sovereignty.
Thank you for spending this time with us today. We truly appreciate you being here and sharing this conversation with us.
And if today's episode resonated with you, we'd love to hear your reflections. With so much love and reverence for your path and for your beautiful, brave soul, this is Galactic Alchemy. We'll see you soon.